Hello, welcome to the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today, very special guest. You may know him as Mads Krugger. You may know him as the Black Hand of Contra, if you will. He is known as Krule. Welcome in. How you doing?
I'm good, John. How are you, man?
Doing good. What's going on in your world? What are you up to? Seem to be pretty busy on the indie scene right now.
Yeah, actually, I had just a really good weekend. Pro Wrestling Revolver did a Disruptor Pro up in Atlanta, Georgia, and then I did a show last night in Atlanta for a now that's TV reality kind of TV show they're doing out of Atlanta. It's not really based around wrestling. They just kind of added wrestling to their to what they're shooting, what
Wow.
they're doing. There was some interesting stuff going on last night. So
Wow. So reality TV wants to bring wrestling, not vice versa.
yeah, hey, I'm not mad about it, man. It's another payday, right?
Exactly. That's pretty cool, though. That's interesting. Kind of
It
like, why
was.
would
It
they
was.
want to do wrestling? You know what I mean?
I couldn't tell you. And I and couldn't tell you, I know some of the guys up there, and I think one of the guys that helps kind of run it, known him for several years. And so I think that's why I kind of got my foot in the door without even having to hunt for it. It was just one of those things. And hey, it worked. It was great. It was a great night. It's a free show. You come out there just filming for content. So, they've got the people they use on their reality TV that are there watching it. And then, it's free to the public. So
Interesting. Atlanta's got so much going on right now because
they
obviously
really,
when
yeah,
people left Hollywood, now Atlanta's kind of like almost like the hotbed for a lot of stuff.
it is. And it's becoming more and more. A couple of years ago, I did a independent film out of Atlanta for a studio. And that was, it seems to have just tripled, or quadrupled since then, the amount of things that are going on and the kind of places that are opening and just more and more content that people are shooting up there.
What was the film? What were you doing?
It's called Dead by Midnight 2.0. If you remember Tales from the Crypt, it was very
Oh
similar to
God,
that.
yeah.
It was one of those, yeah, it was one of those that they split up. There was several different movies in one. Kane Hodder was actually in it, the original Jason, which was really cool to be a part of, especially with what I do now, with so much coming from that character. But anyway, so yeah, it was fun, good experience, something to put on the resume, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny, whenever he does like Comic Cons up by me in Jersey, people go nuts. Like, oh, Kane Hodder's there. I mean, they go nuts for when he shows up. So that's pretty good.
Horror has horror is kind of like I compare it to deathmatch wrestling in the movie world. Like maybe not as big of a fan base, but die-hard fans.
Yes. Yes. And it's funny too because they're so much different than like a normal moviegoer, and the deathmatch crowd is so much different than the normal wrestling fans,
hundred
so to
percent.
speak.
Yeah, no, they're looking for a different brand of entertainment. They're looking for a different type of entertainment. So, and like I said, horror and deathmatch is kind of goes hand in hand.
And I remember years ago there was Ring of Honor and CZW when they were having their feud, the promotional feud. They had the fans on one side that was Ring of Honor, one side that was CZW. It was crazy because you would think it's going to mesh. You're not going to be able to tell who's the difference, who's the ROH fan. No, you could tell immediately, and it was such a weird dichotomy, but it was cool. It was like, wow, like okay, I was like I'm a Ring of Honor fan, but I kind of want to sit on the CZW side to see
Right,
what's going
right.
on with these guys. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I wish you saw more of that today. And I think you may see some of that. I think JCW and GCW, like they're doing their versus show, and I've never been to one, but I could imagine with that fan base, both of those fan bases, that some of them may mix, but there's going to be loyal for each side, and I'm sure that's why they do it. So.
For sure. And there's always like that deathmatch fan that's there for specifically deathmatch, not really interested in like the high flyers or anything else. They really want to see the hardcore action, if you will.
That's right. Yep.
So when you break into the business, I mean we're going back here, but when you break in, were you always a fan though? Did you always love the wrestling business?
I did. Yeah, I was a fan, dude. I grew up in South Georgia. So even, I'm from, people always think I'm from Atlanta, but I'm actually 3.5 hours south of Atlanta. I live almost on the coast, right outside of Savannah, basically about an hour outside of Savannah. So, we grew up NWA territory, right? this was, I didn't know anything about the WWF till probably early '90s.
Wow.
All I knew was the NWA and the Crockett, and so wrestling was a big part, especially where I live now, a part of this community. On Thanksgiving, I remember families, like not just my family, but other people's families coming to my family's house to watch the Starcades. So like it was a really big deal.
Awesome.
So yeah, I was a wrestling fan, for as long as I can remember.
Who was like your guy, if you will? Who was your favorite?
I think Sting when I was a kid. Sting was my guy. As I got older and started growing and getting bigger, I started kind of attracting to the bigger guys more, the Undertakers, the Vaders, Sid Vicious, the bigger guys, because I knew that's what I was going to be as I started outgrowing all of my friends. But as a kid, man, it was definitely Sting. He was the man. Still is the man.
Love the Stinger, the best. So charismatic, it's ridiculous. I love though the Crow Sting too, which you would think wouldn't be as charismatic because he's not talking, but he got more over than anybody by not talking for a year.
No, yeah, well, and I grew up with his character, so as you could see, you know what I mean. So like when that happened, I was into middle school and high school, so I was growing up and changing and. The teenage brooding years, right? Like, so like you could relate to that too. You could relate to that character, even without him speaking. And hey, that's a huge accomplishment when you can perform without speaking, and you have to perform with your eyes, which I have to do now, and your hands and your body language. That's a whole different aspect to acting and entertaining.
Right? That don't you even have to go kind of over the top a little bit because you kind of have to make up for it?
You do. I mean, well, it's like it said, it's especially with the eyes. You can tell so many stories with the eyes, and how you look. And then but just how you move, the speed at which you move and how you move and the things you do with your hands. Like that was, the black hand of Contra. That was like one of the first things that I knew. I was like, okay, this is supposed to be a thing. So I got to really get this over. I really got to work this hand. And I've never had any experience doing this before. So, I'm just shooting, I'm just going off the hip, with everything I'm doing, but I'm getting feedback after every match, and they're like, man, yeah, do more of that, do more of the hand, hand towards the camera, hand. So I was like, okay, I'm on the right track here,
Where does that come from? Like the black hand of Contra specifically? Is that something that Court comes up with? Like what is that?
The whole thing. Right after or during COVID, we shut down for that year. And I had been signed the August before COVID. So 2019. That was when I signed. We did 2 shows. In those 2 shows, I kind of bounced. They didn't really know what they wanted to do with me. So we bounced from I was going to be with MJF and the Dynasty and Hammerstone and Holiday. I was going to be like a muscle for those guys. And then they switched from that. They didn't really want to do that. So then they just had me. I used to do a gimmick, Logan Creed. So that's who I was on the Indies for years. And they were like, let's just do that. Well, then we shut down. And, it was kind of up in the air. I don't think anybody really knew what they wanted to do. And I would find out later that they really didn't have any plans for me at all. And the plan was once they got back to fans in the arena, they were probably going to just release me. But week before tapings, Court calls me. He said, hey, I got an idea. Basically, the Mads Krugger character, the Black Hand of Contra, was supposed to carry them through the pandemic, and so they could save that title match with Fatu and Hammer. And so they needed somebody for Hammer to feud with, and so they created this character. And we did it the first 3 days. We did 3 days of tapings in Orlando in October of 2020. And I did an amazing job in those 3 days. Court really fell in love with the character. I didn't necessarily fall in love with the character, but I took it home and started, playing with it, started designing some stuff and kind of come up with the concept of what you see now and created that on my own and created the Krule persona. Because they wanted to keep Mads Krugger within the company. They didn't want But in my mind, I said, okay, I've got to learn how to work under a mask. I need to learn how to do this and do it right. And I wasn't, we were working once a month on tapings, and that just wasn't enough for me. I needed to have it and get it out to the world and let the world see it. So.
Love that. So basically, who you're studying as you're creating the character with the mask and everything and the hand, like who are you studying? Horror movies?
I was studying horror movies. Yeah. It was, and I'd always been a horror fan, but then it really it was different. It's kind of like watching wrestling, and you watch wrestling as a fan, and then you're watching it as you're learning, right? So now I'm watching horror movies, and I'm looking at spots that happen to the movies, and I'm like, that I could do that in a match, right? That could be something you can do in a match. And of course, Undertaker, and Kane and the guys who had done horror already. Maybe we didn't call it that, but that's what it was, So and even not long after, you got Bray Wyatt, who was doing started his thing, and the Fiend, which was amazing. That kind of gave me motivation, because I was like, oh, all right, this is good. This is hard as a thing, and it can be over. So that motivated me. Seeing his success motivated me to get it over, because I felt like it was completely two different characters. It wasn't like we were doing the same thing. It was just the same genre. So
with the hand itself, he literally comes up with the black hand of Contra, and like black you kind of.
I just put a black glove on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, black hand of Contra, I need a black glove, and that was kind of just put it together. I remember when I got dressed the first time. It was the old outfit, the original Mads Krugger. It was like an old military style ski mask, or cold weather mask, I think is what it called, and just a singlet, tank top, and army pants, and that was it. So I put the glove on. I kept the black paint on the face and the eyes from what I had been doing before. And I think it's funny that, I had been doing that for a couple of years, and it almost seemed like I was evolving, which I actually used and played with on the independents at some shows that I had been doing for years down in the Southeast. And we used that as like it was an evolution. And I had been becoming this thing all along. So that was a lot of fun. I got to tell different stories in different places. But yeah, I mean, it worked out, right?
That's cool. It definitely worked out, because it's almost like a Jason. Like he's growing, he's becoming this monster. He keeps getting bigger and badder and meaner. Like, pretty cool to kind of develop that character all the way through and then do it in MLW. It's really cool.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's fun for the people that have followed me a really long time. They have that backstory, and they got to live it and see it. And, and even with the new, with Krule, they love that more than they did the old, which is great. I think that speaks for itself. When you can evolve and bring the fans with you to the next step of it, then you really have succeeded. It's easy to get over to a new crowd. Like, as I started getting out and traveling with Krule, man, it was immediate. People it was a thing. As soon as you walk in the room. But these people in the Southeast, they were a little more hesitant to accept it. It was a different reaction when I would walk out here, where people knew me, compared to where people had never seen me before.
Right, definitely. I could see that, and I even like that name too, because it's almost like you're like the guy's hand, if you will, like the second in. You know what I mean? Like the enforcer, that's the second, the guy you have to get through to try to even, get to that next level. It's a pretty cool creative name.
It was the whole thing, it like I said, it was a really great story to be put in. But also for me to take it and just absolutely say, I've got to kill this, and I got to, this is what I've been given, and I'm going to do it. It all worked. It worked out, perfectly, because I'm still sitting here today. So,
and the name Mads Krugger itself, that's from Court and MLW. Where does that come from?
That comes from Court. Yep. Like I said, everything that you saw from the original was him. Everything you see now is what I created from that. Like I said, I always give him credit without being given something to do, to try that was different. I would have never. I don't know if I'd have ever tried anything different. So that was cool that I was given a challenge, and I think I accepted the challenge and exceeded expectation.
Where does that name come from? It's Krugger. What is that?
So there's a documentary. I remember, I cannot name it because at the time he sent me, but there was basically like a warlord from South Africa, and that was his name. He was pretty ruthless guy. Like I would have to look it up. I apologize, I don't know it. And I just remember so vaguely him telling me that story. But that's where he got it. It was supposed to be like a warlord type character, like a general, if you will.
He always does that, because I was talking to Alex Kane too, and Alex Kane, he had him watch the Muhammad Ali documentary and kind of learn. Yeah.
He's a big documentary guy. You always joke, I'm like, you got to be a G.I. Joe fan with a group like Contra. It just always screams Cobra to me.
Yes.
But I love that. Because I was a G.I. Joe guy. So like I think I took to it immediately. I remember when even when he said I had or we're putting you in Contra, he could have put me in anything and I'd be like, I'm in, because I thought it was the coolest thing that they had going, especially with Fatu and Joseph Samuel as the manager. I mean, they were the heels, of the company.
Very cool gimmick, and even Contra, obviously the old video game Contra too, which is completely different than what you guys are doing. But the name itself is an awesome name. Who was your G.I. Joe guy, if you will? Who's your favorite from G.I. Joe?
So actually, that's another part of the character. Krule comes from Crockmaster. That's because I live on a farm, and there's a creek that runs by our house, and some of the videos and stuff I've shot on Instagram. Or that's me in this creek, like just kind of wading through this creek in full gear, Yep. But it's swampy, South Georgia, wet, snakes, and we've reptiles, and so I'm like, okay, I think this is my environment. This is where this monster lives, and so it. Kind of needs to have that Crockmaster vibe, so.
That was a very cool character, very cool figure too. I remember he had the vest and the dark mask. Yeah,
I've got a couple of them.
Oh, awesome, nice. They're probably worth something now.
Yeah, well, not the originals. They've done some of the releases, like re-releases over the years, but they've made some really nice ones over the last few years. So,
still got the T-Tank, if you will, the Sergeant Slaughter figure with the tank, but there's missing pieces. So I was like, damn, it's probably not worth or not worth as much because it's missing pieces.
Yeah, we got. So you remember the old aircraft carrier? They had.
Oh God, yes.
So it's I've got it, but there's pieces missing, and I keep contemplating on whether I want to try to like break that out, and make that a hobby. I'm busy enough. I don't need something else distracting me right now.
Yeah,
but those are worth a lot of money if you can find, especially when it's still in the box. I've seen a couple, and it's.
Damn, I regret selling so much of my stuff. Oh my God. And I remember I found that Cobra Commander, like the original, the blue one, the original, and he was falling apart, like the rubber band on the inside of the legs. Like I was like, oh, how the hell do you even put this thing back together? Like, oh man.
I did find a whole box of my G.I. Joes from when I was a kid about 2 years ago. And me and my dad actually bought all the rubber bands and screws, and we put as many of them we could back together, and then just put some together and made new figures, which we used to do as kids anyway. And I gave them all to my son, so now my youngest son is playing with the same figures I played with, which I think is awesome.
Nice. I love that. And like to be able to put them back together, that's no easy task. That's like a little bit of a chore to put them back together, those G.I. Joe.
Yeah, it was like I said, when I was a kid, man, we used to, me and my uncle, we would take them apart and rebuild them and make our own G.I. Joes, basically. We'd melt guns on their hands. And so so we had a whole other faction,
Yes, that's awesome. I do it with my son. I give him all my old toys. He ends up breaking half of them. I'm like, oh my God, they were pristine for 40 years, and now they're ruined. Like, how the hell did that happen? I gave them to you for 5 minutes, and you're already ruined.
Right. Thankfully, I've trained him well. He understands the value of his toys. He actually had some cousins over, summer, and the first day they were here, like an hour later, he comes in, he kind of whispers in my ear, he's like, "Hey, can we hide my rings?" Because they were being kind of rough with the rings, and I was like, yeah. So we hid the rings and so put some stuff up he didn't want broken. So
yeah, I ended up taking a few things back. I said, "I'm going to leave them here. Let's just, just don't. If you can play with them, just don't break them."
That's right.
They're technically yours now, your toys, but they're like, please don't break them. Like just for my own edification, like my own calmness. Like don't end up breaking these things.
And it still feels just the same as I did, 30 years ago. Now, don't break my toy. So.
Yes. I gave them a couple Thundercats too, and I was like, please just be gentle with these. They might be worth something. Yeah. Some of my old wrestling figures too. I was like, whatever. It's like they're already beat up enough. I was like, you can, go to town on those guys.
Oh yeah. Well, remember the old gloves, man? The just hard plastic ones. Those were nearly impossible to destroy anyway.
Oh God, yeah.
Those were the best. So
those are actually good as like a weapon to beat people up too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love the Croc Master because I didn't even think about that. I love the Croc Master Krule Mads Krugger connection. That's awesome. I didn't even remotely think of Croc Master.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, in the wrestling business, you look at you especially look at Krule in the match. The first people, that's Kane. You hear Bane a lot, which I can definitely see, the likeness of a Bane character. But that really wasn't the motivation behind it. It was, it really was like Jason Crockmaster. I think that was the two that I wanted to blend.
When you are doing that, and you're obviously you're watching, you know some of the mannerisms and stuff. Are you trying to kind of create a character that's not necessarily a wrestler, so to speak, like a guy that can, almost like Killer Cross? To a certain extent, he creates videos and content for YouTube and all this stuff outside of just being a wrestler. Like he's trying to make it something more than just wrestling and a wrestler.
Absolutely, yeah. And I do that. I think I do that with my Instagram, in the reels, because it's not necessarily just videos of me wrestling or moves and things like that. It's just creepy, horror type stuff, and I'm just really digging into that. So this is. Not fairly new, but I'm still tapping into what exactly that looks like and how I can play with that. But there's so many opportunities, to do different things and attract a different audience that will see that and then see, oh, wow, this guy does wrestling too. Well, let me see what this looks like, And I try to adapt that into the wrestling. I don't want to have the same match as the rest of the guys on the card. What would be the point? I want it to be like a really short horror movie, like a short horror film, when I'll come out. And that's what I try to go for.
Love that. So with MLW right now, are you technically still with MLW? You're still under contract, or are you free and clear? Are you a free agent?
No, I'm still with them. We're coming up. I re-signed last summer. I started back last January, and then after a couple of shows, they were like, "Hey, we really want you to come back and be with us." And I was like, "Sure." Everything was going great, and I was really happy to be back, and I like where things are going. The locker room is phenomenal, and we keep adding new people to that. So it felt like a good thing to do, the right thing to do, and I haven't been disappointed a year later. And I've got another year, and hey, doesn't look like anything's going to stop right now. So it's going great.
When you are there, right? Like right now, are you feeling like the sellouts? Are you feeling like a bit of momentum? Because it seems like MLW kind of caught fire a bit. I know wrestling itself was been pretty hot lately, but are you sensing anything with MLW as far as catching some fire?
I do. I think wrestling goes through waves, and it goes through ups and downs. Far as fans go, far as wrestling itself goes, it's an up and down business, and the business is changing again. We can watch, everything starts at the top, and you have to look at what the WWE is doing. You kind of get a feel for what's happening around it, and they're the top right now. So you have to say that that's what it is. But you see what they're doing, they're doing a lot of new stuff, and it doesn't necessarily rub the truest, the true wrestling fan the right way all the time. they're a business, and they're very much just doing business. And
Yes.
the decisions they're making is for business. It's not for the wrestling fans. It's not for the old wrestlers. It's not for any of the things that we've been taught to, to believe in. And this is how you do it. It's changing. So, and I say that because the MLWs, the AEWs, the TNAs, there's their opportunity to bring in the wrestling fans and give them what they're looking for, and not just your WWE fan. And when I say that, I mean people who don't know of anything outside of that. That's what they watch. That's the brand. They don't know that there's independent wrestling. Believe it or not, there's so many wrestling fans that don't have a clue that there's other wrestling going on.
Right.
They don't. And we forget that sometimes.
That's so true. Even my son, he's into wrestling now, but he's a WWE fan. We went to Madison Square Garden a few times. Like, he literally, I'm like, oh, I'm going to a show, and Bret Hart's there. He's like, because Bret Hart's back in the WWE. He's like, you liked him like when you were a kid, I thought, blah, blah, blah. He's got pictures of him. I was like, no, it's an independent show. He's like,
right.
Wait, what? Like, he's like, mine's like, wait, what is that? I'm like, the small show. It's a small, like, he didn't even understand. Like, and he goes, no, I'm just a WWE fan. I was like, so you're not coming? He's like, no, I'm a WWE fan. So I'm like, oh, okay. It's like, even, trying to get him to explain it. So I know a lot of younger fans and like fans in general just pay attention to WWE, and that's it, unfortunately.
Right. But I think as they grow into it, they find other things. I mean, that's what happened to me. I didn't know that there was any other kind of wrestling besides the WWF and WCW until I was in high school. And a friend of mine, we connected and realized we both were wrestling fans, but he was old school, like on the dirt sheets, typing in the chat rooms. Yep. He was one of those fans. He had all the tapes. He had just this huge tape collection in his room. And so he starts introducing me to Japanese wrestling and backyard wrestling, and Ring of Honor and just and then he introduced me to Wildside in Georgia, in Cornelia, that Bill Behrens was running. And I was like, there's wrestling. Like, it just opened my eyes to this. I was like, I didn't realize there was wrestling in Georgia, that this is something I could actually pursue. That was kind of when that happened that I realized, oh, this is something you can actually do. Because at that point, as a fan, I had never really considered, how do you do this, right? I'd never considered, how do I become a wrestler? Even if I thought about doing it, the question had never popped in my brain of how do you do this? And so I think that's where it started for me, is the realization there was other things out there.
So many promotions and great stuff to get into. I mean, even if you just focus on like Japan for a while, it's like, oh my God, Noah was great. All Japan was great for a period. A New Japan, like, then you go to Mexico, it's like, oh my God, forget about it. There's so much good wrestling everywhere for decades.
And like I said, we were just saying, it's growing. You look at how much wrestling there is all across the world, man. There's, I know, I was just talking to a guy the other night, and he was, man, you need to get booked up in Alaska with me. I was like, there's a show in Alaska. He's like, oh, it's great. He brings you in for 2 or 3 days. You do 2 or 3 shows. And, he said, that's phenomenal. It's awesome to see how widespread what we have this love and passion for. It really is.
Yeah, Alaska, that's pretty intense. I know WWE used to run there once in a while, but yeah,
right. It's been a long time.
Really think about it.
Yeah, but you think there's an independent show, running in Alaska, and there's guys getting booked from right here down south for that show. So
it's gonna be a hell of a trip. Jeez, all the way out there, right?
Oh,
one end of the world to the other, basically.
Well, I love that part of it. I've never, not yet, and I've been doing it for about 5 years hard now. So like, it hasn't completely worn me out yet. I do love going, but I'm from the country, so I grew up in a small town. I never got to go anywhere, so I enjoy getting to go and see the world.
That's great, though. So you're liking being the old school wrestler that's making the towns. If you
Absolutely, yeah. I enjoy my drive sometime too, man. That's kind of my time for me. When you got kids and things like that, you're not always by yourself very much, so. That's my time to reflect and kind of do some new goals and figure out what's next and think about things. So that I enjoy my drives too.
When you do, going back to when you kind of got involved, you're a fan. How do you get in? Like, who trained you? How did you actually break in?
So I was wrestling at a 2-year college here in South Georgia, East Georgia College, and there was an independent show that ran in the town where the college was at, and that's kind of how I was like, I gotta go, right? I've got to go check this out. Contacted the guys, and I was like, hey, I would like to. How do I be a wrestler? How do I become a wrestler? And they said, come to the show, and afterwards we'll give you a tryout. So I did. I was big at the time too. I was heavier than I was now. And I don't think they thought I was going to be able to do anything. So then I did a couple of bumps. I did some flip bumps, some rolls, and they were like, oh, okay, yeah, you can, we'll train you. So it started, and it was, the promotion doesn't exist anymore. And it was just a very local, small promotion in South Georgia. So, and unfortunately at the time, we're talking about 2004, MySpace was just being created. So it wasn't like I had this library of training schools that I didn't even know there was training schools that existed. So, I'm jumping at the first opportunity, unfortunately. I wish I would have found a better school, if all honesty, but that was my foot in the door, and that got it started. So
when you're there, like, you're probably the biggest guy, right? I would imagine in most situations.
Yeah, I remember they had me reffing matches for this show, and it was that.
Oh
that's
my God!
Very, very, very independent show. But it was hilarious. I'd see the VHS tapes of the matches, afterwards, and I'm standing in the ring in a ref shirt, and these guys just dwarfing the two guys wrestling, and I was like, what is happening right now? Like, it's so funny. Even I didn't really know the business, but I was smart enough to know that, like, something doesn't seem none of this seems right, So
yeah. That's really weird. You have a guy who's like 6'10" with a bunch of small guys, so everybody looks like they're really, really small. It's crazy.
Right. But like I said, small independent wrestling, South Georgia, that time, man, there was, there was worse out there. It could have been worse. So, like I said, it was what it was. It got my foot in the door. And it took a lot of time for me to get out of the Southeast. And probably because of where I started, there was nobody with any connections. None of these guys traveled. The furthest they would travel maybe an hour or two away from where that ran. So, it wasn't like I had started training with somebody who was going to be able to plug me into the wrestling bubble, And that opportunity actually wouldn't come until about 2012. So from 2004 to 2012, I'm basically just piddling around in the Southeast Georgia, and had quit for a few years because I knew I wasn't good. I knew I wasn't getting better. I knew it really wasn't going anywhere. And I was young and started just kind of getting interested in other things, So I left for a few years, and then they started running a show in my hometown, and the guy that was running it, said, hey man, you should come back. And I was in phenomenal shape. And I was like, okay, sure. So that was when I actually created the logo, because it'd been so long. I was like, I'll just come up with a new gimmick. I've been thinking about one anyway. So I started the Logan Creed gimmick then. And I think it was probably the second show. Gallows, they brought Gallows in. Luke Gallows, Drew. And I remember he met me, and he's like, what the hell are you doing here? And we talked, and he asked me, he's just like, is this something you want to do? Like, do you want to be a pro wrestler? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay. And so he started getting me, connected. He never opened a door or showed me any, but he just said, hey, here's the opportunity, go take it. And I did. And so that's really when it started rolling. And that's when I started kind of getting out of just the Southeast. I started going up to Atlanta and some of these, like at the Cornelia Anarchy, which was once Wildside. Like I started working for Bill and started working for Rick and those guys up there. And then I started working in Alabama a little bit, and it just kind of kept growing from that time.
How long does it take you to actually feel comfortable? Like, hey, I'm a very competent pro wrestler. Like, I asked a bunch of guys, and they're like, it took me 5 years. So, like, how long does it actually take you, like, to be comfortable? Like,
I would probably say 2015, 16, maybe. Just trying to think back. I mean, that's been about 10 years ago. So I think I think that was when I decided that I knew I had the ability to do something. I had the ability, I had the size and the capability to really make a difference and do something in professional wrestling.
So when does MLW like take notice, or how really does MLW take notice of you?
So I don't know how they found me. They reached out in the summer of 2019. I think it was June or July when they called me or emailed me. Or no, they called. They did call. And yeah, I had sent email to their website, to the booking, thing they have on their website. But I remember that was a funny year because in 2018, I had kind of decided that I thought maybe I was at the end of the road. Nothing was really happening. I wasn't, I had done some good stuff, but I'd been down and tried to get in and Evolve several times, and there was just really no interest from Evolve to bring me in. And I feel like, okay, well, that would be my foot in the door to WWE, and Gabe's not interested, so like maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should move on.
Right.
But instead of just quitting, I was like, all right, well, I got another year. Next year, my birthday, nothing's happened, then I'll call it quits. And so I just sent emails to every promotion that I could find for a year. I mean, all of them. And some wrote back, some of the indies wrote back, and I worked for them. But nothing else. Again, nothing outside of the Southeast. Still very much just the Southeast. And it was July that MLW called, and we started talking. And I ended up signing my first contract on my birthday that year. So I felt like that was just like one of the slaps in the face. It's like, yeah, you're not done, but you're gonna have to wait every single time.
Yes. So when you look at it, right, like they see something in you and they want to give you the gimmick, and you know what I mean. They saw potential, obviously, in what you could do for them.
Yeah, obviously, and like I said, it was so funny. They knew they wanted a big guy. And they kind of had an idea of what they wanted to do with it, but they, obviously you see what happened and how quickly everything changed from the time I got there to where I'm now, or, just that first year. They just wanted a big guy. They wanted a tall monster. He wanted a monster. That's what Court wanted, a monster. So it just took us a little time to figure out what that monster was going to look like.
When like you're there and you're getting comfortable, are you starting to notice like the character's getting over, you're getting over, Contra's getting over? Like, are you starting to really feel it?
I think I really felt it after that first weekend of tapings. After I did Mads Krugger that first time, and I only say that because of the fact that he messaged me, and that was the first time he had ever sent me a text message since I'd been working there. And how like impressed he was with what I had done. And so that, to me, when the boss tells you you've done a good job, you've done a good job. That's who's paying me. That's who matters to me. And because he's looking at all those things, they're making business decisions too, and they know who's over and who's not, and they know what's working and what's not, and they wouldn't do it if it didn't, right? So that was my nod of approval, and I was like, okay, this is gonna work, and we didn't even have fans yet. All we had was social media feedback. So the first time we got in front of a crowd, I think it was almost like starting over, not really starting over again. They had seen it maybe, but maybe some people hadn't, some of the live that was just coming to the first show. So it kind of felt like starting over, but I could feel it almost instantly as well there too, of how it was the oohs and the ahs, it was it was different. It was different than that. I always tell guys when I'm talking about the difference in the character, you come out and, okay, this is the good guy. So the crowd cheers because they're supposed to, and maybe they do like that guy. So they cheer harder. Right.
Yep.
And the bad guy, same difference. But when I walked out, it was just different. It was not that reaction of boo yay, it was what the fuck is this? You know, like whoa, this is different. This feels different. You know it, and so that's how I can immediately just feel that I was on something.
Cool too. You guys were running Philly for a while. Not that you stopped really, but you were running them a lot after after COVID and everything.
Yeah,
and it was always selling out. It was always a hot crowd. They were very invested into MLW. I feel like that was a hotbed for a while for MLW.
They were, man. How cool that I got to, have probably, the if you have to talk about my classic matches in MLW just to date, you've got to talk me and Fatu and the matches. The match we had there, and then the one we had in North Carolina. Were probably my two favorite matches, and it's definitely the people who work there, in the office. It's their favorite matches. But to get to do that at the ECW arena and at 2300, man, that's super cool.
What made it so special? Just because Fatu was so great, or was it the crowd, the atmosphere, everything?
It was everything. Fatu's one of those guys. I mean, we knew then. You see him and you're just like, why is he still here? Even back then, right? But he's just such a joy to work with, man. He's such a hard worker and easy to work with, and we had chemistry. We had such a great chemistry together, and we got along well, and it just worked. I don't know how else to explain it. It was just such a natural thing, and we made some really good memories.
What do you think about Jaco Fatu? Just overall, like you said, he's great. Maybe shouldn't be here. What's he still doing? Like, what do you think about him though? Just as a person.
He's one of the greatest people I've ever met. He's such a good, genuine person. He's straightforward. He's one of those people. He's so nice, but if if he needed to, he could snap you in half, or he would snap somebody in half for you. And I think that's such a cool vibe to get from a person, to know that, that, man, if something bad happened, he's going to take care of his, but you're never really going to have to worry about it as long as everything's cool. He's that kind of guy, man. And like I said, he shows up to work. He loves what he does. He loves professional wrestling. He loves it so much. And he's always got the best attitude. He always brightened the room, when he walked in.
Crazy thing. I've heard from wrestlers that, for a few of them, that maybe it's not true, but I have a very reliable source that told me this is true, that there was something going on, some shenanigans, and he supposedly, now I don't want to get him in trouble, but supposedly beat up multiple people at the same time by himself. So he's probably decent.
I would believe it.
Up.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah, no, I've never seen that. Like I said, I've never seen him. Maybe once upset, but like not that serious. Like no more upset than any of us would be probably at the time of what was going on. But I've never heard that story either. So, but I don't don't discredit it.
It's a very reliable source. I believe it. So I said, "What is he? The modern day Haku?" He said, "Yes, actually, yeah, he kind of is." I said, "Wow, okay."
I can tell you, I can see it. And I can see, I don't think he would ever do that without justification either. So, whatever happened, somebody probably fucking deserved it.
And the thing with him is, man, he's in WWE now, but what did it take him? Less than a year, 6 months for him to?
Oh, yeah. Well,
first day he's a main eventer, but yeah.
Yeah, never a doubt in my mind that once the door was open that he was going to run straight through it. And, hey, he did. So that was never a doubt in anybody's mind.
It's funny. Some of the fans were like, "Oh, can he cut a promo?" I'm like, "Oh, have you ever seen him in MLW? He cuts awesome promos, yeah." And now they're all doing the gotta mean, and yeah.
No, I remember when we were feuding, his promos would inspire me to make better promos, and that was some of the best. I had not really talked as this gimmick, right, and I hadn't really done much talking, but he helped bring out the best in me and what I had to say, just off of what he was saying, to me.
Yep.
And now that's so cool, man. That's when you're working with somebody who's, like I said, passionate about what they're doing, because they're bringing out the best in you too.
And the cool thing about your feud was that was kind of like, no offense to the rest of the show, but that was kind of like the most interesting part to me. Obviously, it's you guys in the feud and the breakup of Contra involved too, and kind of throwing that out there. But I felt like that was the most interesting part of the show. It's like, wow, these two big behemoths are just going to beat the living hell out of each other. You know what I mean? They were just very interesting.
Yeah, no, and it worked. I mean, the way we did it, and I thought it was really cool. I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but because we did the feud, and that ended, and then it wasn't long after that I left the first time. I had just different things happening, and I actually got injured, and so it was just I asked for my release and was given it, but then when I come back, in last January, that was literally Fatu on his way out the door. And I would be told later that when the conversation come up about like who would he want to do something with to, kind of end this thing, he wanted to work with me. And he actually, and I thought that was so awesome, that was kind of my foot back into the door. And it all happened kind of at the same time. You know what I mean? It was perfect timing, perfect storm. And so we got to finish that thing off with me coming back and him moving on to greater things.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of perfect and kind of poetic that, the new Contra, old Contra, in that way that happens. But that's even cooler that he acts basically to work with you. Like he wants you to be the guy.
Yeah.
Quite honored, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's, like I said, he's one of those honest people, and he doesn't mind talking good about somebody, even if they're not around. You know what I mean? And I know he's told other people that, how much he enjoyed working with me and things like that. So that's, hey, he doesn't have to do that. Nobody has to do that, but he's one of those people.
What do you think about kind of the infusion of some quote unquote ex-WWE guys into Contra and into MLW? Do you like that? Because some fans are weird about it, but it's almost like, man, a guy like Dijak, he should never be released because he's got so much potential. A guy like Baron Corbin, or Bishop Dijak, guy is great. Like, you know what I mean? So sometimes fans have a weird opinion of it. What do you think about that, having those ex-guys come in?
I think it's great. I think it gives me selfishly a opportunity to work with some of the best guys in the world. It gives me an opportunity to see where I stand on that pole, and can I stand with these guys, and can I work with these guys? And that's just more confidence building for me, right? But at the same time, it's a learning opportunity from people who have been there, who have seen the bigger world. And to hear their side of things. I know Dijak's one of he has such a great mind for putting together matches. I love listening to him and learning from him. So, I always tell people, you never stop learning. I think we learn from each other. We're all painting our own picture. We're all trying to make our own art in a sense. And so there's something to learn from everybody you meet, especially when they're doing good. There's something they're doing that's working.
Well said. Yeah, you can kind of definitely learn from the guys who've been there, done it, and are actually successful doing it. Definitely learn from them.
Absolutely.
What about Matt Riddle, bro? What do you think about Riddle?
Matt Riddle, man. He's a good dude. I'm looking forward to when we finally get to have a match. We've worked several times on the independent since he's been released. We worked up in Michigan twice. There was another show. I don't even remember where it was at. It was so random. But he's one of those guys, easy to work with, comes to work. He's there to perform. He is a performer at the very heart of it. That's what he was put on this earth to do. I really believe that he was meant to be in front of a camera.
And you had some tag matches with him, right? Battle Riot, obviously. So you guys, there has been some interaction with you guys.
Oh yeah, and on MLW. Like I said, we haven't had that one-on-one yet. That's right. I always want that one. But that's another thing about what MLW does is they do save those matches, even though it may not seem that way sometimes. There's matches that they will save, just like me and Fatu. That match didn't happen for a long time, but it did. It eventually did, And so there's certain matches that they do save, and they save them for a reason.
To Hammerstone too, they saved for a while.
Absolutely, yeah, that was a big one. And like I said, that was what got me in. That was the lead up to that match was my place. It was to get it there. Yep. So
So is a goal of yours to be the MLW champion? It's to dethrone Riddle, if you will. Is that a big goal of yours?
Uh, Absolutely. Just to me, the person that I love storytelling in wrestling. That's why I do it. That's why I want to do it. Is it a necessary thing? And no? I want to do whatever's best for business, whatever's best for the story. But if that is what's best for the story, then yeah, absolutely, that'd be a great honor. Obviously, you look at the history of the guys who have held that title. Mike Awesome was one of my favorites, and I always go back to that. Like, he held the MLW title. So yeah, the Matt would definitely wants to be the MLW champion. But as far as Krule goes, if it needs to happen, cool. If it doesn't, we go from there, and we do whatever needs to be done.
I did like the battle royal. I feel like MLW is bringing in a lot of like names just random, even the big Mexican stars. I don't know. I thought it was cool. It's like, oh, Rob Van Dam's in it. Like, there's a bunch of guys in it. I was like kind of surprised by it. I'm like, damn, it's like Chris Adonis. I was like, oh, this is, they're bringing a lot of random guys, but it seems like kind of a cool thing to do with MLW.
Yeah, no, I think Battle Royale is always so much fun because I think they tried to do that. It seems to get better. To me, it gets better every year. I think Atlanta last year was kind of an off year. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't, what it had been. I thought this year was great. I thought Rob Van Dam coming in at 30 was amazing. Obviously, again, standing in the ring with the guys that I was standing in the ring with at the time, and then here comes Rob Van Dam. That's one of the moments where you kind of look around, you take it in for a second, right? I'm standing in the ring with Dijak and Corbin and Riddle, and here comes Rob Van Dam, and I'm like, okay. Like, yeah, I can tell that guy that was standing in Swainsboro, Georgia, 20 years ago, he did all right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a nice spot to be in, especially with all those guys. And obviously, Contra's like the land of the giants over there. You guys got all the monsters on.
Oh, yeah, we got Baba Tundum now, man. He's, I'm not even a giant anymore standing next to Baba, dude. He is a monster.
Yeah, there's some big dudes in MLW. Was WWE, like you said, Evolve, Gabe maybe didn't have interest, but was WWE ever a thought? Was that ever an interest? Because back when it seemed like they were the land of the giants, they would love a guy, a huge guy.
Yeah, and, I think a lot of my if I would have been, so there's so many what ifs. If I'd have found a different school, if I'd have been more plugged in those younger years, what would have happened, right? So I hate to do the what ifs because. Right. What has happened has happened. It is what it is. I move on. But they did reach out right after. It was so funny. Right after MLW contacted me, it was 2 weeks later that I got a call from William Regal. My youngest son had just been born, and I was walking through a Krugger grocery store, and the phone rang, and I looked down, and it says WWE, and I remember I was just staring at the phone. And I didn't know what to do, right? I was like, and I look up and the buggy's just kind of moving up towards the aisle and my baby's sitting I was like, oh shit.
My God.
I had jumped and grabbed the buggy and I answered the phone. Yeah. But, they were offering me to try out. They wanted me to come down. I was like, what is happening? Where's all this coming from? But, I've learned now that I'm kind of deeper into this, that everybody knows everything that's going on, whether they're supposed to or not. Nobody's not clued in on what's happening. Yep. But they offered me a tryout. I told them, that I was talking to MLW. They kind of asked me, when do they want you to sign by? And I told them, I think they want to try to get it done pretty quick. And I told MLW, they were actually. They said, hey, go do it. When they asked when do they want to do it, and I said they said they want to do it as quick as they can. He said, well, let us know, when they can get you in, and then, do that, and then we'll decide, if you want to sign with us or not. So I let them know. They set up a date for a tryout, and then called me back and moved the tryout to the following spring. And MLW absolutely did not want to wait that long. And so I kind of just said, hey, this is not – I talked to some people that I knew and were friends with, and they said, look, man, chances are you go do a tryout. Nobody really knows who you are. They're probably not going to sign you that day unless it's just, they have a something for you right then, right? He said, just go get the TV experience and do the 3 years with them, and you'll be okay. And it actually worked out because there would have never been a tryout because there were no tryouts in the spring, and there were a lot of changes in the WWE after 2020.
Whoa. Gotcha.
So I made the best decision I possibly could because it would have never happened.
Wow, good looking out by your buddy there. Thank you. Yeah, well,
yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, Ron.
So as we hit the wind down and head towards the finish, what's next for Krule? What's next for you?
As far as like just shows coming up, or what do I see in the future career wise, or
like what do you see? Not even just the shows coming up, but what do you kind of see in your future?
Hey, if I've learned anything, I don't think WWE's ever going to be in the question for me. I don't think there's, I just think I'm too old now. I don't think that's just reality. But I do think that, I'm in great shape. I'm healthy. I don't have any injuries. I wrestled 4 times this weekend, and I don't have any issues. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm working more than some guys my age are in a month in 1 week. I think TNA is an option. I think, AEW is still there. Hey, I would love to go to Japan before I'm done. I think that there's untapped potential for me in Japan. And I keep waiting and wondering when that day is going to come. But like I said, I'm in a good spot with MLW because we do have the talent from New Japan that are with us. We have the talent from Mexico that is with us. And so people are watching that. They know what's going on. And I think there's still a lot left in the tank. I don't plan on quitting anytime soon. It's pretty much to take something derailing me, I think, to make me stop. And then after that, I really hope to get into the production and the backstage part of it. I've already took that step, with MLW, and some of the things I'm doing behind the scenes. And so that's, like I said, I love pro wrestling. I love the storytelling. I love creating stories. And I'm enjoying starting to tap into that aspect of it and telling stories for someone besides myself, and seeing what else I can create here besides just for me.
So where can everybody find you and follow you on all your social medias?
It's at Atrocity Krule on X and Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. What's the other threads?
There's a million of them. Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm on it, it's at Atrocity Krule, and if it's not there, then I'm not there. So, but I try to keep them all. I pretty much post the same thing everywhere, so you're not going to miss anything. If you just follow me on Instagram, is probably the best. That's where I probably post the most.
Awesome. Krule, aka Madge Krugger. Thank you so much for all the time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. It's good.